Shabbat shalom to everyone in Wisdom and Torah. Thank you so much for coming and being part of this teaching today. It's going to be a little bit more of a review of my trip to Israel than it will be a specific teaching per se. I want to share with you some of the stuff that we were doing. Now, on Wednesday, we are going to continue our teaching on the book of Romans, chapter 11. We've been covering already chapters 1 through 10. I went to Israel, and then I'm going to continue to finish the book of Romans, and then we're going to enter a few months after. I need to get ready, better prepared for the book of Revelation, chapter by chapter. That's going to take forever, but we're going to do our best to cover that book as best as we can. So today is going to be a little different. It's not going to be a study per se, something structured as a study, but we're going to review some of the things that I did in Israel to let you know what we're doing. Hopefully, we can continue to get your support because things are happening. Doors are opening, and I want to make sure that we're able to hopefully get your support and continue to support us in Wisdom and Torah so that we are able to take the message even if farther places than we have already. So thank you for joining me today. The majority of the teaching is going to be showing you pictures of what I did in Israel, where I went, who I saw, and a few things that transpired that is really allowing us to really come closer to understanding more in the temple. Now, with that being said, I want to read a verse. It's part of this week's Torah portion, and I want to read the verse. And the verse says in Leviticus chapter 26, verse 2, it's part of the Torah portion, Vechukotai, and there's 12 commandments in this Torah portion, 12. All of those commandments are found in chapter 27. But the reading is from chapter 26, verse 2, all the way forward. And, you know, this particular verse is very important. It's actually the foundation as to why I go to Israel. I went to Israel just to do exactly what this verse says, to revere his sanctuary. Okay, so it is important that you recognize that the word Mishkan, Mikdash, is the one that is being used here. Mikdash. Mikdash, there's two words, Mishkan, V'Mikdash, okay? One is the structure, and the other one is the presence of God within the structure. So Mikdash is consecrated area where the presence of God is. Mishkan is the structure in itself. So please understand that nowadays, Beit HaMikdash, when we talk about the temple, we say the Beit HaMikdash. In Israel, that's why we all know it as the Beit HaMikdash, not the Beit HaMishkan. Okay, so we talk about the house of the presence, Beit HaMikdash. Okay, so that's very important that you remember. So the verse is actually the second time that is quoted exactly the way as it appears. If you go to the book of Leviticus chapter 19:20, it says, "You shall keep my Sabbaths and you shall revere my sanctuary. I am the Lord." You know what's interesting? I really do not understand people. I got to be honest with you. It's kind of difficult because it doesn't matter how much we teach people. There's always going to be someone who takes things completely the wrong way. I posted this verse in Spanish, and you shall follow my Sabbath, seguir mis sábados, día de reposo, y reverenciar mi santuario, to revere, to respect, to be in awe. Okay. But some people, when you translate it from the Spanish Facebook, when it's in Spanish and you have a translation, it says worship, but it's revere. So some of you were testing me saying, "Oh, are you saying that you have to worship the temple?" And I'm going like, it was a Spanish post. You need to understand not all the words translated the right way. So no, you don't worship the temple. You worship God in his temple. Completely different. You would think you know that after all the years you've been studying with me. So it's like, please understand that you only worship God, the God of Israel, no one else, all right? And his temple. You don't worship the structure. You study it. You revere it. You respect it. By the way, it is a commandment. It's commandment I'll tell you right now. Give me a second. It's commandment 254. Commandment 254 is Leviticus 19:30. "And my sanctuary you shall revere." But you have to also keep his Sabbath. It's based on the whole idea of the temple and what it represents. In Ezekiel 44, verse 23 and 24, it talks about the priests teaching the people to keep the things that are holy, consecrate the Sabbath, the Sabbath days, consecrate and have statues, the festivals. The duty of the priest is to separate the holy and the profane, the clean and unclean, and to sanctify all those things that are holy, to consecrate them. Okay? So, based on this quote, we are going to start basically showing you pictures of what I did in Israel. The reason why I want to show you this is because I think it is important that you will consider looking into the context of the Bible. Sometimes you read something in scripture and you read it and you read it, but you don't make the connections with the topography, with the geography, with the history. One of the things that I've developed in my methodology is looking at the Bible from a historical, let me show you the educational ladder. Actually, I got to find it in English and it takes me too long. So I have a methodology. My methodology is designed for you to, and I think I have it right here. So I'm going to give you my home screen so you can see, okay? If you can see my home screen, can you guys see my home screen? Please put it on the chat so I know you're with me. Say yes, yes. Okay, good. So the whole idea about this particular educational ladder, the educational ladder is designed to teach us a blueprint of study. Everything begins with covenants, righteousness and justice, honor and shame, new creation, chaos and order, sacred space, and ultimately God and his temple. You enter the spheres where there's life, order, Eden, and holiness through moral purity. Now, it's interesting that the whole morning, and I can show you all the notes I made in Spanish, I connected this chapter 26 and 27, actually 26 alone, with every single one of my spheres, and also the educational ladder. See the steps here are biblical archaeology, cultural context, historical context, geographical context, context of the temple, context of the book and the letter. And I added one that is the legality of the Bible. Okay. That's every single one of these you will find in chapter 26. So, but I'm going to focus on mentioning some of these in the pictures that I want to show you. Now, the reason why I want to show you the pictures is because I want you to become aware of really what I was doing in Israel. You know, sometimes people assume or think that we're just having, a vacation or whatever. And it was actually a 10-day temple tour. There were four people in total. Myself as a teacher and three of my students that we did an intensive course. Now, my teacher, Joseph Good, he was there also at the same time. So we were able to hang out a little bit with them for a few days. They had a lot of complications with their airfare and things like that. But, we were able to meet up with them and meet some people. So after they left, we stayed and we did a 10-day. I'm talking about wake up 7:30, by 7:30, 8 o'clock, leave their house, and then walk all through the city. I divided the city of Jerusalem into sections. We went to the museums, we studied there, we went around. Each day of the week, we studied something different. Around the city of Jerusalem, we went to Shiloh also and went to Itamar. That's one day that we took to get away from Jerusalem and go look at some things related to the temple. And I'm going to begin this section here. It may only take me about an hour. I'm going to go through them quickly. I want you to see what I did. And the reason why I want you to see what I did is because I want you to catch on to the vision, and join this this endeavor that we're trying to do. We're trying to bring awareness of the temple. So what I do, I divide the tour, and every day we cover a different side of the city. So let's say first day we go to the museums. I'll teach you a huge model of the temple. Then we go to the Bible Lens Museum, and there we talk about ancient Near East, making a contrast and with the temple and the priesthood and things like that. Then we go to the Jerusalem Museum, the other part of the museum where I show you the soreg. Then I show you the cornering stone, the trumpeting stone. Then I show you some evidence from the temple period. Then every day we take one section of Jerusalem. We can go to all the pools that are within the city, and I'll show you the great amount of water that was there. We will walk through the eastern gate, all the eastern wall. Then we walk all through the south, Robinson's Arch area and also Davidson Center. And then we also go to the City of David. And the reason why we go to the City of David is so that we can walk up the Pilgrimage Road. And we were actually escorted and we were taught there by Eli Shupron, the guy he's the archaeologist who found many, many, many things and been digging there in the City of David for 30 years. He gave us it's a second private tour that I got with him, and I learned a lot more this time around. So it was great. Then what I do, I go to the western side of the city and the western wall. We go through the tunnels, the western wall tunnels, and we learn there. We go underneath everywhere we can think of. We go on the Temple Mount. This time we went on the Temple Mount I think 3 or 4 times. And I was able to do something I've never really done before. And I did it for the sake of proving the evidence that we know where the temple building is today. Okay, so we were able to present that information to one of the leading rabbis in Israel in regards to the temple. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Okay, so there's something happening. The Father is opening a lot of doors. And I want to take the time to publicly thank my teacher, Joseph Good. I got to be honest with you, God opens doors. All the glory and honor goes to the Lord. We know that. But the Lord uses people to facilitate and to teach and to help us. And I have to say that I'm honored to be a student of Joseph Good. I've been with him now 14, 15 years. I've been studying with him a lot. We've been to Israel. We've done this course in English a few times. And my ultimate goal is to take a group of 10 men or 10 or 15 women or men, whatever, and stay for 10-day tour only of Jerusalem, teaching you the temple. We walk a lot. We learn a lot and be an intensive course. It's not going to be a sightseeing thing. It's going to be more of an intensive course of the temple. That's really my ultimate goal that I want to accomplish eventually on top of my Israel tours, okay? Something that I want to start planning for the future. But I have to say that, being in contact and having the insights that Job had and the research he's done that I've learned that I'm trying to validate every time I go to Israel, he also allowed me, by the mercy of God, he has given me favor with Joe so he can introduce me to all of his contacts. And, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have a teacher who is a good example, who's a good mentor, and there's no jealousy, no competition. We're just doing this because we love God. And I want to publicly give my gratitude to, first of all, the Lord, the creator of the heaven and earth, and also to my teacher, Joseph Good, for allowing me to tag along and have access to all the resources that he has been working at for 30 years. So I'm a beneficiary of his hard work, and I'm grateful for that. Okay, with that being said, I'm a huge believer in giving honor to those people who help you. And this year was a pivotal year for me. And this trip was a very important trip in which I was able to present information to one of the leading rabbis dealing with the temple in Jerusalem. And he considered the information. Whether he does something with it or not is irrelevant, but at least he considered it. Okay, so let's get right into this because I want to show you all the stuff that I saw, connecting it with the temple. Okay, so if God says, revere my sanctuary, and I know there's no sanctuary now, does that mean that we stop studying the sanctuary and the Mikdash? Well, obviously, we're not talking about a tabernacle because the tabernacle was the first blueprint, and then God Himself gave the expansion of that blueprint to David and to give to Solomon, and then so on and so forth, and then later on to Ezekiel. So the function is the same, but obviously there's more people. So, and by the way, I figured out in this trip, I want to share something with you. I want to ask you guys a question. How many of you, especially Kyle, this question is for you. You don't have to come up to the mic. I just want you to make a comment. Have you figured out, putting you on the spot, why is the territory of the third temple, Ezekiel's temple, so big? When you read it, it's like huge area. And people cannot figure out why. Okay, so Kyle, I'm putting you on the spot. I think we talked about it. I can't remember. But I figured it out. So why do you guys think that area is so big? And I figured it out as I was talking to, Rabbi Mackover. We were talking about the red heifers, all the rules dealing with the red heifers. We were in Shiloh, and we were trying to figure out, and I said, hey, could it be possible the reason why it's so big is because of this and this? All right, so you guys are not putting your answers. Put you on the spot. Okay, check this out. Question. What is the requirement for Passover? Where's the only place, according to Deuteronomy 16, that you could eat the Pesach, the Passover lamb? Now, remember, we're talking about the Passover lamb. We can eat lamb if you want to now. People don't do it because they don't want to give the impression they're eating anything that they could call the Korban Pesach. As long as you don't slaughter it and manipulate the blood, some people eat lamb, okay? But what is the requirement according to the Torah in Deuteronomy chapter 16? It says, yeah, you say it's right, to make room for the Israelite. I get you, but you can make room for Israelites and not live within the walls. The city walls is going to be so big because the Bible says that all the nations must go up to celebrate the feast, tabernacles, right? They're going to be there for Passover. The book of Ezekiel also tells you that no uncircumcised of the heart or uncircumcised of the flesh will be accepted to enter the temple. Ezekiel 43 and 44 talks about this. So, Kyle, you're right. The lamb must be eaten within the walls. Well, guess what? How many more people are going to be available in the time of Mashiach to go to Jerusalem to celebrate the high holidays? Because the whole nations are going to be submitted under the great God of Israel, the Father, as the main patron. They have to go up. The city is so big in order to accommodate all the people who may show up to celebrate Pesach. Now, how many of you never considered that before? It is a command. So the enlargement of the temple and the remodelings of the temple and the cities were always to accommodate the people, because the law, the Torah tells us, according to the Torah, Deuteronomy 16, it has to be within the city walls. That's why when the walls were dedicated, there was a ritual. You find that in the book, Colorful Ceremonies. It tells you there was a ritual done in order for them to be able to celebrate the holidays, because once the walls are sanctified, then you can eat anything inside of them. Okay? All right. So I'm glad I gave you a piece of information. Not even one amen or something like that. You guys are a tough crowd today, but that's okay. All right. So the first picture, I'm entering from the west. This is called Jaffa Gate. The Jaffa Gate. Now, why is this important? The Jaffa Gate, give me 1 second. I'm going to look for the book because I want to show you if I find it. When I need stuff, I find it. So I want to show you what they used to do. I don't see it, so forget it. You don't get it today. Another day. All right, so I'm looking from, I'm walking east right now. I'm walking east. Now, that is a Jaffa Gate. That's the entrance of the Jaffa Gate. Today's Jaffa Gate. During the time of the history of 2,000 years, it wasn't until the English came in and they destroyed the wall to make that road. General Allenby was coming on a white horse, and General Allenby actually got off the horse and he walked into the city. He says, "I did not come as a conqueror." It's very interesting because he was coming in on a white horse, and they facilitated for him to come in the city by basically, breaking the wall, making a road out of it. But the fact that he did not walk in, come in on the white horse, very important. So that man read the Bible. He understood that his Messiah coming on the white horse, riding on the horse, that will be the sign of kingship. All right, so we're walking east right now. That is called you have the Armenian quarters on the left. You have the city of David on the right. And I'm sorry. The citadel, the Tower of David on the right there. That's just the way it's called now. But if you go straight, you're going to find that these are the shops. Okay, I'm walking down from west to east. Right now, why is this relevant? It's interesting because I was actually there. Man, I got the picture. I gotta let you see it. I went into a shop when they opened. The reason why they're closed is because of all the war. There's no business for them right now. Now I'm looking there from west. Behind me is east. I'm sorry. I'm standing looking east, and behind me there, towards the foreground, is west. Everything's closed. I want you to notice what's on the floors. You see the water conduits here? Now, this was the exact same way. There was a bridge, a pedestrian bridge, and also an aqueduct that was there during the time of the first temple, the second temple, I'm sorry. Okay, this is very important. So I came into the Jaffa Gate. The water will come from Mamila Mall, a Mamila Pool, not the mall. There's a Mamila Mall there, but above it, there's a pool. I'm going to show you that later. And then the elevation actually is going down towards the Temple Mount. Okay, and you can see the water conduits underneath of it. Now, what I find really cool and interesting, and I'll show you in a little bit if I could find it. I was going to one of these shops. When I got all the way to the bottom, I went into one of them and he said, come on, come over here. He wants to sell me stuff. And I didn't want to go in, but he kind of forced me to go in. So when I look, he goes, look, there is a remnant of a wall right here in the middle of the shop, right there. It's actually to the right of that picture, a little bit farther down. Okay. What's interesting is there was a remnant of a wall and it had a water conduit next to it. I took a picture. I'm actually going to go and take my tours when we go to that shop so he can let me take pictures and show them the archaeology right under it. So, I mean, they have a glass and everything. It was archaeological site right in the middle of the Muslim area where they're located exactly where the ancient bridge used to be. And I'm going to show you a little bit more on this. Now, this is the Hakotel. The road that I was telling you about is to the left of that. It's a little high elevation on the left. And I'm looking to the wall. Now, in the wall, there is I'm going to show you here. This is the Kotel. Do you follow? Are you guys following okay there? I need you to give me some feedback so I know where you're at. Okay. Okay. This is the wall right here. Where I was telling you is this road. You see this right here? This is what I was telling you about right here. Okay. That goes all the way to the Jaffa Gate. And there was the water conduits that will fill all the cisterns that are here. Now, the whole premise of this teaching today is to show you where the main cistern is that will prove to you where the temple location was. And if you find where the main building of the temple was, then you know exactly where the altar was located. And that's the information that when I talked to Joe about meeting the rabbi, we review it, and I told Joe, hey, I want to present it to him. Would you give me permission? Because that's actually Joe's research. Say yes, do it. And then when we go back, hopefully we'll go back soon and we'll present it to him again. Okay. All right. So this is here on the west. This is the east. And on the right of the screen is the south. And obviously on the left is the north. So I was standing somewhere around here is the gate of the chain, what it's called today. And then this is the Kotel. Right underneath here, we were under there for the Western Wall tunnels. Now, you see this area right here? It's actually, this is perfect because they built something on top of this. But here it's uncovered. They found a Byzantine and Roman Byzantine period Cardo. It's about 4 meters under the platform here. You have this. We've been there before. I've taken my tour down there, and they found that area. It's running from north to south, and normally that's the way they ran in Jerusalem, the corridor there from north to south. So there's a lot to see here. So what I do, I take my first day and we go through the west. We studied everything. We go to the tunnels. We go to everything within the Jewish quarters that deals with the temple. We go to the Temple Institute. We go to the House of Cathros. We also go to the Herodian mansions when they're opened. We go to the Western Wall. We look at the Wilson's Arch. We look at the southwestern corner, which is right here. Then another day, we take all of this area right here on the right side of your screen. This is heavy. They found 170 mikvah. 170 mikvaot all throughout the west and the south. It's interesting. They were all located either at the entrance of the southern entrance of the temple or the southwest, where the gates were, or the western side, where they had the entrance to the temple. None of them on the city of David. Mainly all of them in this area right here. It's quite interesting. Now, I don't know if you see follow me if you see this road. Write something down. Watch this. You see the cursor right here on the top right? There's this road. And it comes out right here, the Dung Gate. You see with this little circle? Right here is the Dung Gate. Right? Now, the pilgrimage road that I'm going to show you in a little bit, actually is over here. Follow the cursor where the road is. They have dug all the way to this area right here, right by the road. We were able to go that far from the city of David on the pilgrimage road and then finish it up on the drainage system they have there. There's a drainage system for water, and therefore from that moment on, we were able to just get underground to the southwest corner right here on the drainage system. Now, the whole drainage system goes all the way underneath the road to the Shiloach. So we walked up to the pilgrimage and then we went finish it up on the tunnel. They have really dug a lot. So we're hoping in another year or two, we'll be able to take the pilgrimage road all the way up to the southwestern steps of the temple. Okay, so that's something to look forward to, in my opinion, for the future. All right, so that's what I do. I take one side of the city and I study it out, and then we go to the north. We study it out. And that's what I also do on my tour. This is the menorah right there in the Jewish quarters by the plaza. And it's a very significant one because if I'm looking at the menorah like that, behind you, about maybe like 30 yards behind you from there, 30, 40 yards, there's probably one of the most important places within the city wall, within the Jewish quarters, that tells you about where they took Yeshua to be judged. Okay, it's called Herodian Mansions. They're changing the name, as a matter of fact. They already know that they were the priestly residences. They were the residence for the high priest. And we know Caiaphas and Ananias lived in that area. They did not live where the traditional place is. So we know now where they lived. Okay, so we have evidence now, and it allows us to see more and understand more about the last days of Yeshua. Now, remember the wall. Now, this is Hezekiah's wall. Now, they added all of this. This was not here a few years back. So now we'll be able to walk down and walk across here. The Bible tells us in the book of Isaiah that they were building houses next to the wall. They found the houses right next to the wall. Now, to the left of this, above, please understand that all the archaeology and all the evidence from the first century and beyond, prior to the first century, is probably 4 to 5 meters below today's street level. What they did after they took the city of Jerusalem in 1967, 68, they started building above the archaeological evidence. They needed to rebuild, so they built above it. Okay, so in order to understand Jerusalem, there are layers. You see today's, but you have to go down 4 meters. So when you go down 4 or 5 meters, you see a lot of the first temple period, and then you also see a lot of the second and on the Herodian period too. Okay. Now remember that I told you about Mamila Pool. I have a picture from the 1800s, late 1800s, that they took a picture from this location above it. Obviously, at this time it would have been filled up with water. I only stayed about, 3-5 minutes walk distance from here. The mall is right down the road, straightforward. That you see the Mamila Mall. There was a picture in the late 1800s. They took a picture from above the pool, and you can see all the way to the Jaffa Gate. There were no buildings whatsoever. That ancient road that is to the right of that building, that ancient road. But this is a pool that was actually functioning until at the end of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. And today's empty. Now, you will walk by it, you'll never see it. I was going to Israel since 2004, and I recently came into it by one of the guys actually told me that there was a pool. I was very interested in the cisterns about 9 years ago. They told me, hey, have you seen the Mamila pool? I said, no. And I will walk by there, but I never noticed a pool. So you will be completely oblivious that existed unless you take it there. Okay, it's in the middle of the city, right next to the consulate, American consulate, and the American consulate is actually on the same ancient road. Okay, Fuller's Road is what it's called, and that's ancient road that for a fact that Paul and any of those guys who lived in the first century would have taken to go into the city if they're coming from the west. Okay, all right, let's continue. And the reason why I'm taking pictures with myself in it is only because nowadays people don't believe anything. So I put the picture so they know that I was there. Let me see if this was in Spanish or not. Hold on. I recorded too. Hey, I picked up the one in English, so go ahead and listen to it. Water was life, specifically here in Israel, in the Middle East. I'm standing at the bottom of what is called the Mamilo, back in the middle of Jerusalem, near the Jaffa Gate. You find this, in my opinion, a jewel of archaeological evidence about the water sources in Jerusalem. Now, this pool was here way during the time of the first century. It was a source of water for the western side, the northwest side of the city. There are conduits that will lead you all the way to the Jaffa Gate and to the city of Jerusalem. When people tell you that there was no water in Jerusalem, that only the Gihon was the source of water, it only lets me know that really they're not understanding the topography and the resources that were used in biblical times. This was used into the late 1800s. In the beginning of the 20th century, the water was still available for the use of the city. People like Karl Rashid, Charles Warren, Wilson, Charles Wilson, they all came here and they surveyed all this stuff, specifically the pools, and we have a few pools. Okay, so you guys don't seem to be hearing it okay, so I'm just going to leave it there. But it's giving you more or less the same information I was giving you. Khan Rashid, Charles Warren, Charles Wilson, Periotti, and many of the other surveys from Palestine Exploration Fund, which is PEF. That was one of the biggest organizations back in the 1800s, where they sent Royal Engineers to actually survey the city and the old city of Jerusalem. They're the ones who actually measured everything. They got all calculations. We got all the resources. We got all the evidence about that. So let me continue. If not, I never finish. All right. So this is an important place that you can go to. Okay. So I went to the Babylon's Museum, and just to give you an idea of what cultural context and cultural backgrounds, why is it so important to me when I study? As you notice, I haven't really taught anything on Judaism for a long time. Although I studied it for 9 years. You got all the books behind me, and I still look at them once in a while. But to teach certain things, I focus more on cultural backgrounds. I want you to understand the cultural background uh, behind what you're reading. Sometimes we read stuff and we never consider its context, the audience, to whom it was talking to, what is the language that is using, to whom it's talking to, and I think this is so important. So when I take my tours and my private classes to the Bible Lands Museum, I take you there for a reason. In order to understand an ancient document, a legal document like the Torah, you must consider also looking into surrounding nations around the time frame the Torah was given. Therefore, it gives you a glimpse of a historical account as to why the temple functioned in such a way that is odd to us. Why did the priests have to wear long garments? How come the Bible prohibits, the reading of the entrails? Why is the entrails of every animal placed on the altar? How come no one would eat any of the sacrifices around the altar or inside the building? These are very, very important reasons as to why to study the ancient Near Eastern customs in relationship to the narrative of the Bible, to know the differences. Okay? Okay, so this is an example of that. I want to share it with you. I always wondered, and I said, how come Israel never complained when Moses was told by God to take the lamb and then slaughter it on the altar? I've taught on this before, but I'm not going to repeat it now if that will take me too long. But it's interesting because I go to Israel all the time. Jews argue about everything. But yet the Bible relates to us that everything that Moses told them, they did right away. No one complained about anything. Okay? So it has to have a meaning. Now we know why the lamb or the goat. You can use the lamb or a goat, according to the Torah, to slaughter at the gate of your houses in the time of the Exodus. In the time of the Exodus, they were told, take a goat or a lamb and take it to the threshold of your door, okay? And put the blood on the doorpost. Okay, I know why the lamb or the goat. It represents the god Canaan, okay, who was supposed to be considered the potter, the creator, the one who provoked the floods from the Nile, one of the original gods of the Egyptian people. The head of a goat of a lamb or on the body of a man. Okay. Now we know, now we understand why in the book of Genesis it says, and God formed man in his likeness and his image out of the dust of the ground, because they believed in Egypt that it was Canum who formed man out of uh, the sediment from the river Nile during the floods. Okay. So now we know why the Bible was written in that fashion, to make a distinction and to give all honor, all praise, all creative power to the God of Israel, not the God of the Egyptians, Mesopotamians, and the Canaanites. Okay. But with that being said, I always wonder, why did they have to put the blood on the doorpost? We are commanded, according to Torah, to put the mezuzot, or in certain people practice, put the commandments that around the doorpost. And that always intrigued me until I went to the Bible Lands Museum. This is a remnant of a lintel from one of the temples. Now remember, Israel was also a slave. They belong to the slave class in Egypt. Thus, they have signs of submissiveness to the gods of Egypt. They were slaves, so they had to be told what to do. Could it be possible that the blood on the doorpost was to basically, it represented life for Israel, but it's also blotting out whatever loyalties Israel had to the Egyptians, or basically blotting out their identity of slaves and putting the blood as a sign of freedom and protection from the destroyer, from death. That's a message of resurrection. You have to be in the house for protection. You have to have a covenantal relationship. So this was a lintel for one of the temples, and it has the language of their gods and what they believed. So now it makes sense as we continue to move forward as to why they were doing certain things. Now, this one, I've been by it in the last 10 years. And it was until this trip that I decided to stop and showing the guys about Egyptology, because I saw the lintel of this particular picture. Okay, it's actually a relief. It's a relief of a priest. And now, have you ever wondered why in the Bible tells you that you're not to use leaven? And also the priests have to be dressed. Now, check this out. So this is a priest in the Egyptian temple, and this is what they used to wear. Notice that there's almost basically naked, just like a little loincloth. And then he's doing an offering, a bread offering, a leavened bread offering, and he's sitting. In the temple now, you do not sit. The priest cannot sit anywhere within the temple area of the court of Israel, the court of the priests, or the court of the Levites, and inside the temple holy place and the holy holies. The high priest could never sit down inside the holy holies. Okay. Now you can sit outside those places, but not in the court of Israel, the court of the priests, court of the Levites, none of that stuff. Okay. But here you have a relief of an Egyptian priest. He's not covering his head. He has probably a wig or the hair. And then he's offering a bread offering, and he's barely wearing any clothes. Now, contrast with what God says, and my priests, I'm going to cover their nakedness. They're going to cover all the way to the ankles. And by the way, no leaven in any of the offerings. The only leaven was the 2 loaves for Pentecost, Shavuot, but those loaves are not put on the altar. They're not eaten there. Okay? Remember that. They're not presented on the altar. I think they're waved or they're presented. I can't remember right now, but they're not part of the putting them on the altar like some of the other bread offerings and the way they did it. Okay? So now we know why. And you can gather this. You see the way they dressed. So now it gives you an idea more or less how they used to dress in different castes. And I want you to notice the tassels. You see the little tassels here? Certain people wore tassels. I'm not saying they were the techelet. By the way, people who were rich, they were techelet because techelet was a sign of status and divinity. Like you see this guy right here with tassels and this guy right here with tassels. So that gives you a contrast now to understand why the tassels were given to Israel, except to use the techelet, but not just the elite. See, in Egypt, as in the ancient Near East, only kings and princes and priestesses and people with high status could use the blue, the techelet. It's not just any blue, by the way. It's a very expensive one, right? In Israel, God makes all the children of Israel okay, to wear the techelet as tassels, as a sign of royalty and as a sign of status, okay? All right. This is a very intriguing picture here because this is in the Bible Lens Museum, this is the picture of Ramses II. Now, I want you to notice underneath the feet, okay? There are 9 lines. I want to read to you 1 Corinthians. Let me share that screen. So I want to read to you 1 Corinthians. And this is how the ancient Near East complements when we study the Bible. Paul uses a very intriguing language, 1 Corinthians 15. And I'm not going to read all the verses, but right here, verse 24. Then the end, when he, Messiah, hangs over the kingdom to the God and Father, when he has abolished all rule and all authority and power, for it is necessary for him to reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. That expression is the picture that you're seeing. That expression is this picture. Okay, Tutankhamun had a footstool that he had 9 people, okay, drawn in the footstool. I think he had 4 Semites and 5 Africans, Ethiopians, with their hands tied behind their head, behind their backs, because there were actually kingdoms submitted and defeated by the king of Egypt. So here you see Ramses II on a footstool, and his feet are under 9 lines. Those 9 lines represent the 9 enemies of the Egyptians. Now, let me show you some. If we go to Psalm 83, let's go to Psalm 83. How many of you probably never make these connections before? This is the importance of understanding the ancient Near East in connection with also the temple. If we do not study the temple, guys, we're in trouble. You know, Psalm 83, it says, against Israel's neighbor. Okay, it's talking about verse 3, they devise cunning schemes against your people and consult together against your protect ones. They say, come, let us annihilate them. He's mentioning the enemies, right? And verse 6 says, the tent of Edom, the Ishmaelites, the Moab, the Hagarites, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, Philistia, okay, and the inhabitants of Tyre, Assyria, has joined with them. If you really pay attention, they're the enemies of the people of Israel. Okay. And I think there's 9 or 10 here. But it's quite interesting because now you understand it based on a picture that you see at the Bible Lens Museum showing you what hierarchy was about. 1 Corinthians 15 is using the language of a hierarchy authority of a sovereign who has dominion over now enemies and made them slaves or clients. Now they work for him. Okay, and that's really the language that 1 Corinthians 15 is trying to convey in regards to Yeshua coming and ruling and reign to return the authority of God back to him and the sovereignty of all the nations back to the Father, because that was the duty of Adam. That was supposed to be the job of Adam, to rule and reign on the earth and represent as the image of God who the Creator was. Okay, let's continue. All right, so it's just in the same museum. I'm going to show you something else. Let me read you the verse. I'm going to read you the verse. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to read you the verse. When you go in the book of Revelation, no, actually, let's go to the book of Hebrews. Let me see if you can see it, okay? Let me know if you can see it right now. It's the verse right here. Can you all see it? Okay, so when you go to the book of Hebrews, guys, I'm not really random. It's just that I'm following my pictures. I'm trying to show you, make the connections. Okay, and I know if you haven't heard it like this before, it might be a little confusing because I'm showing you pictures. You don't know where they're located, but once you look at yourself, then you understand more or less where you're at. Okay, let's go to verse chapter 10. In chapter 10, verse 11, check this out. It says, right here, verse 11, and every priest stands every day serving and offering the same sacrifices many times, which are never able to take away sins. But this one, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins for all time, sat down at the right hand of God. And then listen to what it says. And from now on, waiting till his enemies are made footstool for his feet. Same language. But the key here is sitting at the right hand, sat down at the right hand of God. Well, you got a problem. See, no one can sit in the temple except one person. In the temple area, in the area of the priests, in the area of Israel, Israel, in the area of Israel. Give me a second. I'm looking for something here. I want to make sure. I'll show you the pictures now. Okay. No one can sit except one person can sit in the area of Israel, a king of the line of David. Okay. That's another teaching in itself. But the text says that he's sitting at the right hand of the Father. Now, this is a map of the first temple period. Okay. This is Harabite. The bottom of the screen is the Kidron Valley. The left side of the screen will be the Chinon, and the middle right through here is the Ethiopian Valley, the Valley of the Cheesemaker. This is Shiloach and the city of David, and here you have the Gihon outside the city walls. This is the time of David and the time of Solomon. Now, when Solomon began to expand on the city, obviously he built to the west this wall, okay? And then what he did, now remember the one in Jaffa that I told you about? Here it is. See this wall right here? This is the one that I was on that is served as in the time of the first century as a pedestrian and the water conduit that will come from the Mamila pool and the waters that will come from the Solomon's pools that you find in Bethlehem. Okay. But the context here that I want to talk to you about is sitting at the right hand of the Father. So I'll be looking as if I were standing on the Mount of Olives. So the way we're looking at it is east to west. Now, can you see this building that my cursor is in right there? That's the temple. Yes, if you see that. Okay, perfect. So to my right of that, right here is north, right? And to the left is south. But if you are looking from the Temple Mount, okay, if I'm standing on the Temple Mount, if I'm standing exactly where my cursor is, that will be the south of the temple building. But in connection with the temple building, let's say that I'm now here looking east. Follow me. This is why you need geography of the temple. So if I'm standing right here looking towards where I'm speaking from, right here from the Mount of Olives, and I go to the right, which is south, okay, to the right, which is south here, then the palace of Solomon or the king's palace would have been at the south side of the temple building, which when you look from the west to the east to the Mount of Olives, the south side of the temple building would be the right hand of the temple proper. Hopefully you got all that. Don't ask me to repeat it, okay? So sitting at the right hand of the Father was an idiom for where the king will sit in his palace. He will sit south of the temple, but if the temple and the building and the palace is looking towards the east, then obviously if we're looking from west to east, the temple is at the right, at the higher north, but the palace will be at the right side of the temple, looking eastward. Okay? Perfect. Okay. So now you know through a model, you can understand the expression sitting at the right hand of the Father, because that's what the king could do, sit in the palace. He will sit in his palace south of the temple, which will be right to his throne, in the south. Okay. Now here is one of the ancient conduits for the water coming from Bethlehem's Solomon's pools that is found in Bethlehem. Okay, it's like 44 kilometers in conduits, and the city is only 11 miles from Jerusalem. But the way they use gravity and the technology they use, this is one of the big water conduits, aqueduct, that were in use into the late 1800s, and they're there in the Jerusalem Museum. Okay, this is the Zoreg. It's interesting. I went to Turkey. I was in Turkey, Greece, and Rome. I went to Istanbul just for the purpose of I wanted to see the other Soreg. There were, I think, two or three. And one of them is in the Jerusalem Museum. The other one is in the Istanbul Museum. I went to Istanbul just for the sole purpose of looking at the Soreg. It's still there, but when I got there, that floor that everything was, what I needed from the discoveries is under renovations. They're not going to be open for another 2 years. So I was really, really disappointed because I went to Istanbul just for that. So, but this is the Soreg. Now, why is this important for us to understand this? Because during the time of the Bible, when you go back to the book of Exodus, chapter 19, verse 11 and 12, God is trying to give the children of Israel the commandments, and he sets a perimeter around the mountain. And he tells them, do not cross it for, if not you die. It's basically encroaching on the sancta. That's what it's called. So this is a perimeter. Now, in the temple, on the Temple Mount, there was a wall, 500 cubits by 500 cubits. The Ezekiel chapter 40 talks about. 40 and 41 tells you about, measuring with a reed, and you have 500 cubits to the north and so on and so forth. But around the temple, you have 500 cubits. And then you have around the temple, inside the 500 cubits, you have another fence, and this is Soreg. Okay. And that fence was 1 cubit high, and plus the size of the little fence make 3 cubits total. And, for the fence and the Soreg. And the reason why this is important, and when I go to the Temple Mount, it's quite fascinating for me because people just walk around, they don't learn anything. And we know where the Soreg is found. We know where the Hell, which is how you ascended to get to the temple, is located there now. I could take you right to it. And we measure 10 cubits, and we know where the Soreg was. The Soreg is important because then we will know more or less the area where Paul was arrested when he entered through the south to get to the temple in Acts chapter 21. Okay? So now we know more or less where he was arrested. Crossing the Soreg and that fence meant that you can die. And that's what the Soreg is about. Letting you know in different languages that no one who was uncircumcised can cross the area. All right? So that piece of information is very important. The archaeology helps us understand that the temple was there. Anyone who says it wasn't, they're not really studying the archaeology. That's why you have so many people arguing about everything related to the temple. And by the way, this was not found in the city of David. Let me repeat. This was not found in the city of David. Anyone who still holds to the theory that the temple was in the city of David needs to learn a little bit more about temple geography and topography. I talked to Eli Shukron. Eli Shukron is one of the guys who's been digging around Jerusalem 30 years. And he told me, every discovery we've had that's related to the temple, we never found it in the city of David. We found it south of the temple proper or southwest of the temple proper, outside, near the temple. The Soreg, if the temple would have been standing in the city of David, okay, then they would have found the Soreg in the city of David. But yet they found it on the Temple Mount. Okay, and then that's when they have to take it away. Now that no one can dig there anymore. So, and to the right of it, what you see right there is a trumpeting stone. This is the original one. When you go to the southwest corner, there's one, there's a replica. This is the original one. This is where the priest will stand in the southwest corner, and he will blow trumpets in order to separate the holy and profane. Okay? Havdalah, for example, Havdalah. We are supposed to sanctify. The book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 8 says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Consecrate it. Well, this was the way to consecrate it. Okay, they will sound the shofars before the sundown, and they will sound the shofars, not the shofars, the trumpets, after sundown, okay? After sundown to separate the holy from the profane and the profane from the holy. Okay, this is part of the command in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 8. Okay, so this is the original found right here. They found it in the archaeology, right, with those two little men right there in the picture behind me. That's the southwest corner. That's Robinson's Arch, and this is the southern steps right here. Okay, okay, is this making sense? That's me standing next to the Soreg. Now you know why. In Spanish, we have to prove that I was there. Many people don't know me; they're new. So, if they see me next to it, oh, he went there. So I have to. I'm forced to do it. People don't believe anything anymore. All right. Now this was really cool. This is the guys that I took with me to Israel. I'm gonna go from left to right. This is Augusto. He's from Argentina. That handsome man right here in the middle, and not in the middle. That guy is called Rico. At least my wife thinks I'm handsome. The gentleman in the middle right there is a very important man in regards to the temple. But I'm going to tell you last about him. This is Rafi there, and then Damien. These three men here, they were with me learning about the temple on a private tour. Now let's talk about Rabbi or Rab Ariel. Ariel Israel. I can't remember if it's Ariel Israel or Israel Ariel, but that's his name. Now he was one of the original soldiers who took the Temple Mount back in the war in the 60s. Actually, when he got to the Temple Mount and they took the wall, one of the original guys who took the Temple Mount and they put the flag up there, he was there, and that's when his life changed. He began to research on the temple. He's been studying the temple ever since the 60s. Okay, I was born in 66, so he's been studying it for 57 years. He is the founder of the Temple Institute. Okay, so he is the authority of the temple in the world. He is known as the authority of the temple in the world. And then the other rabbi that I will show you, his name is Rab Makover and Rabbi Persov. Those two rabbis, they were in charge of the Temple Institute's educational platform. He's the founder here, but the other two rabbis that I will show you, they were in charge of the educational platform. They separated from the Temple Institute. And that's why you see that the level of instruction in the Temple Institute is not the same as it used to be the last 8 years, because they're no longer supported by that branch that were actually doing all the research and stuff. Okay? I think the Temple Institute still has a lot to provide in regards to things that you can go and see in the museum, but a lot of the pictures are incorrect and whatever. That's another conversation. But this man right here is it was an honor to meet him. Now, the reason why I only met him by chance. I already made an appointment with one of the rabbis who was going to introduce me to him. He doesn't speak English, only Hebrew. And I was waiting a few more days to go meet him, but I was taking these guys to that building where he's standing. That building right there, about 5 meters below ground. Remember the wall that I showed you, Hezekiah's wall? This is about 40 yards from that wall that is running 4 meters, 5 meters under that building. And I was looking for the key. It's a person who's in charge of allowing people to go all the way down to the Israelite Tower. It was an Israelite tower underneath that building that is actually connected to the other wall that I showed you earlier. When I am looking, the rabbi, he walks by, and I say in Hebrew, "Rabbi, do you speak English?" And he said, "No, I don't speak English." And there was another man coming up, and I say, "Hey, can you translate for me?" And he translate. And when they call him by a name, I go, "Wait a minute, is that Rabbi Ariel?" He goes, "Yes." And I was able to meet him. That's where he lives, underneath his building, about 4 to 5 meters. It is an Israelite tower of the first temple period. Okay, of the first temple period. Very interesting. So I was actually very honored to have met him, and we talked for a little bit. He was really happy that people are studying the temple and stuff. So I pray that this is, edifying to you. I hope people stick around. I have more people today. You are living. Hopefully you stick around. This, guys, this may not be a structured teaching, but I'm showing you things in Israel that I think you need to know in order to learn certain things. So I hope you stick around, all right? Okay. All right, so let's continue. So I took a picture of this because it is actually, this is in the Cardo in the northern part by the Jewish quarters. And this is a water drainage. If you go to my app application, I have the same one. And you see the same one in the Shiloach. I'm going to show you a picture a little bit later. But this is actually what they look like during the time, first temple period. All right. This is a stone that is actually from the Hurda gate. Hurda gates is actually the beautiful gate. This is one of the stones they found in the south corner, in the south wall of the temple mount. All right, and they were beautifully decorated. If you go to the temple app, our temple app, second temple app, and you go to the southern and you go walk through the door, you see the same design. Okay, so then this is the golden grapevine. They would have a big one in the temple. This is not as big. The Mishnah tells you that the vines were almost as big as a human being. They were all completely of gold, very highly valued. And the Temple Institute, they made their own version of gold, obviously not that big. Okay. This could be used for the temple, by the way. All right. This is a southwest corner looking from the west. We went on the lookout point. I want you to notice on the top left. Do you see the top left of the picture, top left side of the picture here? I want you to say yes or no if you see the top left picture here. There's a little dome, a black dome right here. Not this one, the one on the left. You see this open area right here? This open area, and there's a little bit more there behind this building. That's where the red heifers are supposed to be slaughtered. Okay, this is Robinson's Arch. This is Al-Aqsa Mosque right here. The Dome of the Rock is not a mosque. The Dome of the Rock is actually a sacred space marker. You know, what was built there after the destruction of the temple, the Romans, they built a temple to Jupiter. Then later on, then you have the Christians. They came in and they built a church. And then the Muslims ended up building the Dome of the Rock. It's a sacred space marker. The mosque, Al-Aqsa Mosque, is this right here. Something different. This is the area where the royal stoa would have been. A huge portico where the shops, and all the shops were here at the bottom and on the south side there, but also on top of the Temple Mount in the area that was outside of the 500 by 500. Because this area was expanded by Herod during the time of the first and the majority of this the first temple and the expansion of the Nehemiah, and then later on the Hasmonean family. It never got, let me show you from where. You see this little dome right here? Let's take the bushes here. See these bushes right here? Okay, from here all the way to the end, more than likely was an expansion from the Herodian period or the Hasmonean period. From the Hasmonean period all the way to the end, that was extended by Herod. Okay, just remember that. So the wall of the Western Wall, it is not the original walls of the first temple period. Okay, that was the retention wall during the time of the Herodian expansion. So whatever walls you have there, okay, this is from the expansion, not the original walls or the buildings of the temple. It's a retaining wall. Okay, you can still have them there, but every building, well, the temple proper was destroyed. Thus the prophecy was fulfilled. Okay, are you guys enjoying it? All right, again, this is the Western Wall. And you have this arch right in here. This is Wilson's Arch. Now, please understand that everyone is praying about maybe 6 meters above street level, maybe a little more. Okay, maybe 6 meters above street level in the first century. Okay, this is halfway up the wall. That wall was huge. Okay, and the plaza is the same way. The original first century plaza was actually about 4 or 5 meters below this one. So way down there. Okay, so when you go there, what you see is not, you know, ancient Israel. It's actually modern Israel. Ancient Israel is 4, 5, 6 meters below street level here. Okay, all right. Now, this is a very important stone. This is called the bend, not the bend, I'm sorry. The Persian stone. Okay, the offset stone. Let me show you what I mean. If you follow this one, it's in the corner. Okay, if you go from this corner, I'm looking south now. I took that picture a week and a half ago. Okay, I took that picture. I walked in there. There were no Muslims around, so they don't get mad at you. And I'm looking south. You see this little wall here? That's the modern day Eastern Wall. Okay, but from this corner all the way to Muhammad's pillar in the wall of the Eastern Wall, there's a pillar. Okay, and that's sticking out of the wall. that has nothing to do with the temple. That was created later when there was the Muslims building up the wall. But that's exactly the marker of the 500 by 500 on the eastern side. So this is a cornerstone. When Nehemiah came to rebuild the wall, this was the northeast corner of the wall. And you see the finish of the stones is in the Persian style in commemoration of Cyrus giving them the decree to go back to Jerusalem. The stones, based on the finish, you know from which era. When the Bible says, even the stones shall cry out, literally they would. I know, I walk by the way and I know secondary Herodian, secondary Hasmonean stone being used someplace else. I walk by the wall and I know which one is Herodian, Hasmonean, and which one is first, even first temple period. This one is from the Persian period. The finish is from the Persian to give honor to the king of Persia. This is a northeast corner of the wall, of the east wall. From here to the west, we know where it ends now. We know where the corner 500 cubits. From this south, we know 500 cubits. We know the 500 by 500. Now what we need to do is locate the rest of the buildings within the 500 by 500, and we're done. We know that because of the cisterns that are located there. Okay? Now, this is Joe Good. He was there with Debbie, and these are my students. We were right there in the Jewish quarters, right across from Shor Shim, which is a friend of ours. He's a friend of ours, Rabbi Moshe Kipinski. If you go to Jerusalem, please make sure you go to the store. He knows me from before I was in ministry. I visited 2004, and I spent a lot of hours bugging him and talking to him and, pretending I knew anything. And I realized real quickly how much I didn't know talking to him. So every time I go to Israel, I go say hello to him. But here, Joe and Debbie, we found them. They have their own tour. I couldn't make it because I tried, but the airfare was ridiculously expensive a week prior to by the time they got there. It was nuts. And I decided to go a little later. So, but we found them in Jerusalem, and we just actually talking about the Bible. He's walking around with all his files. It's kind of great. It's kind of great. We're learning as we talking and asking questions. All right. Now, this is one of the mikvaot on the west side by the Robinson's Arch. Okay, let me show you where it is. Okay, this is a Robinson's Arch. It was a walkway of monumental steps. That mikveh is right here. Follow my cursor. It's right down there. Okay, on the west side. If you go to the temple app, you're going to find it. It's in the same location. Okay, it's a huge mikveh. And I put there Augusto, so you get an idea how that will be. It says you go to the right and you come up from the left. There was a wall here in the middle. So you can see there's a remnant there. It's on the bedrock. Okay, and they will bring the waters from, Solomon's pools and then rainwater to fill them over 170 mikvaot. They found, the archaeologists found over 170. That's a lot. Okay. All right. What I decided to do with the guys and also my tour last year was to walk the Kidron Valley. The Kidron Valley, normally we go to the Mount of Olives and then we take a bus and we go down to the City of David. But last year with my tour, before the war started, I decided to walk from the Mount of Olives all the way to the Southern Steps. And we learned a lot because you see, there was a brook in the Kidron Valley. There was a brook, and there was also, it's called the Valley of Jehoshaphat. This is where Absalom was buried. And this is a very important place in biblical prophecy. The Valley of the Shadow of Death is actually the Kidron Valley. Okay, remember that. The Valley of the Shadow of Death, because people were buried there, and also on the Mount of Olives. So the Kidron Valley is a very significant place. It used to be a brook, a torrent, and some verses call it the torrent of the Kidron. Absalom was buried there. There's other people buried in that location. Is the Valley of Jehoshaphat, is the shadow of the Valley of Death is there. And I wanted to show the guys how deep it is compared to the wall. That is the southeastern corner of the Temple Mount, right over here. Pináculo, I forgot the pináculo. You know what the Bible says, the English word, I'm thinking about it. They took Yeshua, Satan took Yeshua to a high place in the temple. Everyone used to think it was a temple building, but it's not the case. It's actually right here in this corner. Okay, right here in this corner, because even Josephus tells you the height of the wall plus the depth of the Kidron Valley in that corner made it the deepest part, a very high place. So this is the place where Satan took Yeshua to test him and to tempt him. Okay, so the Kidron Valley is a very important one. We walked and then we went all the way up, and you can see here how high it is. Okay, now we're in the city of David. When we walk right by the shop, there is, you see the shop back there, and look to the bottom right, you see this particular thing in the bottom. This is archaeologically now validated of what the patterns of the temple would have looked like in tiles. I took this picture and we put the patterns on the temple app. So when you open the temple app, you'll see this all throughout. So we know now what the temple floors look like based on the archaeology and tiles that they found when the Muslims were digging on the southeastern corner to expand on what it was Solomon's tables, which is now a mosque. Okay, that's where they pray. I've been able to go down there all the way to the bedrock, and they found a lot of this stuff on the Temple Mount. As a matter of fact, I have a picture. I don't know what it is right now, where they were trying to remodel. I don't know if you know, but under the Dome of the Rock, there is the original stone, the foundation stone. But many people don't know that there's a cave under the stone. It's called the Cave of the Souls. And the Muslims, they even go down there to pray. Where the Ark of the Covenant was above, there's a little cave underneath. And they had actually a carpet for a long time. And I have a picture when they're trying to remodel, they took out the carpet, and what do you find? The same blueprint of what you see here. Very interesting. And they also found it in the Holy Sepulchre, the building of the Holy Sepulchre. They moved some of that stuff after the destruction of the temple, and they used it someplace else. It's quite interesting that you find it in certain places. This is Eli Shukron and the team of people that I was with this time around. We're going out through the city of David. All right. Now, this is one of his discoveries. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on this one. Are you guys having a good time? Are you enjoying it? Okay, so far? You're learning something new. I'm trying to make different connections. Pictures go 1,000 words, So let me know how you guys enjoying it. Okay, cool. Now, Eli Shukron, this is not open to the public, by the way. I paid out of my own money just so that we can have this private tour. Because for me, this is a archaeology class from the professor himself. He's the one who found it. And I want to make sure I'm clear the way that this is going to be explained. Okay, this is right above the Gihon Springs, right above it. Now, we know that there was a place where they kept the Ark of the Covenant. Now, there was a tent where they kept the Ark of the Covenant, but the sacrifices and the offerings were done 2 miles north in Givon. That's where the tabernacle was during the time of David. But they brought the Ark of the Covenant to this location to protect it from the Philistines, and they built a tent. Worship was not done there. Offerings were not done there. Blood sacrifices were not done there. Only protecting the Ark of the Covenant. Now, Obed-Edom, the Bible talks about a gentleman named Obed-Edom, was a priest. He was in charge of protecting it. Now, what Eli Shukron found was what he believes, according to the archaeology, they actually now have a theory that it was called the Melchizedek temple. Okay, now, why he's not saying that the temple was here. He told me the temple of Jerusalem to worship the God of Israel was on the Temple Mount. But he says Solomon was anointed right there. Not that there was a temple during the time of Solomon. He is tracing ancient archaeological evidence back to the time of Salem, before David, during the time of Abraham, Melchizedek, the king of Salem. So his thesis is that this must have been, because it tells us that Salem there was a king. His name was Melchizedek, king of righteousness. So his theory or his thesis is that this is not only the place above the Gihon where Solomon was anointed by Zadok, but at one point It was the temple that he believes belonged to Melchizedek before David, during the time of the Jebusites, at the time of Abraham. Is that making sense? People going around saying that the temple was in the city of David because of this discovery. You're not really understanding what he means. So we are going down about 4 or 5 meters. And now he's showing us more or less the divisions of the area he found. And I'm going to show you a picture so you understand a little bit more. Right here. See, he showed us where they kept the animals, the stone, like an altar, mesavot, maybe like a stone altar, the regular altar. They had a little stone there to make it like a covenantal place. And this is where they used to have the oil, according to him. And you have for the blood, the draining of the blood right here. So he is saying that back at the time, this could have been a temple for whoever king was there before David. Now, this is above the Gihon. So more than likely, the Ark of the Covenant was protected in this same area. And also Solomon was anointed in the same area. How do we know? Because in the Hebrew, when you talk about First Kings, chapter 1, verse 38 to 39 says, so Zadok the priest went down and caused Solomon to ride upon King David's mule, and brought him to the Gihon. Right? That's what it says in English. But in Hebrew, it doesn't say that. In Hebrew, it says al Gihon. You see? It says oto al Gihon, above. Okay, when you go back, he even showed us on the Gihon, not to. So in the Hebrew, you get better understanding. That's something he was very emphatic about. Make sure you let them know what the Hebrew text says. If not, it's not going to make any sense. So now he is putting all the things together. If this was the place where Abraham met and there was a king of Salem, and this is the area where David conquered from the Jebusite that was called Salem, then more than likely Melchizedek was the priest here, and there was water and there was a temple structure. So he came to that conclusion. But we know for sure, according to the Bible, that Zadok, the priest of the line of Aaron, by the way, okay, he came down, he went down and caused Solomon to ride upon the king's David's mule and brought him on Gihon. And Zadok the priest took the log of oil out of the tent and he anointed Solomon. Okay, so now we know where he was anointed. We literally know now where he was anointed. I was there. And at the same time, it is quite possible that at one time, way before David, way before Solomon, way before all those people, Abraham met a man named called Melchizedek, more than likely lived there. He maybe was the priest in that temple that was there. But that was not a temple to the God of Israel. That temple was on the Temple Mount. Okay? Now, we are in the Shiloach. If you go to my temple app and you go to the Shiloach, you're not going to see all of this. These are the latest digging they're doing, expanding south. They're really digging a lot. They're finding a lot of good stuff there. Okay? Got to move on a little quicker here. By the way, you see this corner? Let me see if I find it. No. This corner in the bottom of the screen right here. Eli Shukron was telling us that he found this. He found the Shiloach 2004. 2004, they were digging through here, but there was a lot of water, and they were trying to do a sewer system. They started digging in the ground. They hit a rock. They called him. And they start digging there for what is called the Shiloach. And now this is the expansion on the Shiloach right now. Okay? Remember when I told you about the drainage system? This is now in the Shiloach. The other one that I showed you was in the Cardo, north of right next to the Jewish quarters in a Cardo, in a Byzantine Second Temple period. First and Second Temple period. But this is from the Shiloach, a legitimate first century drainage system. Okay? Very important. Now, we're going under the temple. We're going now under the street. These are now the first century street, and we are going under the modern day community above, maybe about 3 meters or 4 meters in the modern day street. Okay, I don't know if you can hear this. but I'm just going to put it in silence so that you can see Eddie Shukron guiding us up. Can you guys hear me okay? Are you guys getting something out of this? And this is us walking. Now watch, this is a drainage system right here. This is a legitimate first century drainage system. And underneath there was the tunnel that we are going to be walking at the end, because we're walking all the way up north. We're walking all the way north, okay? But I wanted you to have a little bit of a video to see how much they dug, okay? He's guiding us through the first century street. Guys, that right there is first century. Paul would have walked there. James would have walked there. Peter would have walked there. You know, all the disciples would have walked through there. Yeshua, the people coming to for the pilgrimage, they have to. If you study the Tractate Bikurim, and you're going to know that that's why they have to prepare the first fruits to go up to the temple. So now we can walk on first century street on the ground, because this was an open air during the time of the first century. Okay, another picture going looking north now. Okay. Continue to move up. That's first century street. Now, by the way, I never got this far before. Before I was able to walk up to here and then got to get out. But now we were going into areas that no one is allowed except archaeologists or the people digging there. That's going all the way to the road right before you hit the Dung Gate. If you've been to Israel, then you know what that is, on the south. Okay. Now that we walked all the way up, now we have to finish to get to the southwestern corner through a tunnel, the drainage tunnel. Remember? The water drain. There's a sewer, there's a water drainage. This is the tunnel. By the way, Eddie Shukron found this. He told me he found this himself, and he found so many things. Now we got to the southwest corner. This is the bedrock. Now, Josephus, he describes the temple. He talks about how when Herod expanded on the west, the south, and the north, that he actually put the foundations of the walls, retaining walls, all the way to the bedrock. Ladies and gentlemen, there it is. This is the bedrock. This is the stone bedrock, and these are the stones that he placed, the wall that he placed down. Literally, we're able to go down all the way. By the way, this is like 3 meters or 4 meters above the first century street level. Not where they're praying right now. There was a bedrock. There's about 3 or 4 meters in the first century street. Then what you see, the western wall is over all the way here. So there's a lot of area to look down and to go up if you would have been there in the first century. This is Eddie Shukron. This is what we come out of that tunnel on the southwest corner. This is a first century street. Okay, so now we're moving on to a model. Joe took me there a long time ago. It was probably the most revolutionary piece of information. I went there with Joe. I paid for me to go and have 12 days of intensive temple study, archaeology, history, topography, geography, all that stuff, okay? And the whole idea was to find the evidence, to look for the evidence on the location of the temple, because everyone was actually saying that it was in the city of David. Okay, so we said nonsense. Let's go look at the evidence. Now, he took me to this particular location. It's called Conrad Sheik Model. It's in the Schmidt School, right outside Damascus Gate. There are 2 models there from the 1800s that he built. Now, there are 2 other models that you will find at Christ Church, immediately entering Jaffa Gate, right in front of David Citadel. There is a Christ Church. It's been there from the 1800s, and there are 2 models that Conrad Sheik also built. Okay, I highly recommend you go. You're going to see what the city looked like, what the Temple Mount looked like at the time of the 1800s. Very, very precise, by the way. Very precise. This particular model is a gem. If you go with Joe, you spend a lot of time there. Okay? And this particular model is important because it teaches you what the cisterns were like. And this is the reason why I want to show you this. Now, I want you to notice this particular topography here, this is called the Bethesda Valley. We're looking from the east to the west, and this is the northern side of the Temple Mount. You see the Dome of the Rock right here, and this is the northern side. Now, during the time of Solomon, this whole area right here did not exist as a building. This was filled in by Herod for his extension. You can see the original topography right here. Okay, very important. All of this was added by Herod. So during the first temple period, then the wall, the northern wall, would have been here somewhere in the eastern corner. Remember the corner I showed you? The Persian stone, the offset stone, that would have been the northeastern corners, 38 feet from the eastern gate right here. This is the modern day eastern gate, 38 feet right over here. This is all the way to the west. That's where the original northern wall was of the temple. Anything northern of that was added in by Herod. He filled it in and he expanded on the Antonia fortress. So you can see the topography underneath what is modern day Jerusalem. Let's move on. You can see it there. It's very important to know. Once I understood this, but this is the reason why people say, oh, you can build the building here. You can put the building on the north of the Dome of the Rock. It's okay. No, it's not. Because you have all the buildings that must be built alongside the blueprint. The temple building plus the altar has to be in the same exact place as the original one, cannot be moved. And then you have 4 buildings adjacent to the main building. Beit Aptinas in the southeast. Then you have Beit Hanitzot in the northeast. Then you have Beit Hamoket in the northwest. And then you have Beit Osrot in the southwest. You have the temple building, and those buildings have to move along with the temple building. So if you move this, the location of the temple building was here. You move that over here, you can fit it there now because you have everything filled in by Herod. But during the time of David, oh, not David, well, Solomon, this area right here did not exist. It was a valley. It was a natural defense for the northern wall. So no, you cannot move the location of the temple because it seems logical to you because you don't know the original topography that is already there for you to learn. And we have all the information. Okay, I got to move along, guys. I don't have enough time right now, but I got to go teach in Spanish immediately after this. I'm standing where more than likely is the area where they will slaughter the red heifer. Guys, do you see anything burning there? No. Do you see an altar there? No. So whatever people are saying that there was an altar that they were slaughtering the red heifer and they sacrificed it, it's a complete lie. Anybody who says that don't know what in the world they're talking about. Okay? They have to be prescribed. They have to be slaughtered in the place where the Torah in Numbers 19 tells you. And by the way, the slaughtering of the red heifer does not require an altar. The altar the CVS was showing is actually 20 minutes south of Jerusalem. I couldn't even get to it because if I hire a taxi, half of the road is not even paved. It's a place where they go today to rehearse. It's a rehearsal altar. It's metal. It's not kosher for any slaughtering, for anything, for any korbanot, because it's not the proper altar. It's a reenactment. They do reenactment to teach the people how things were done in the temple proper. So don't believe the lies of the people. Please go to the resources that study this stuff. Now, these are the red heifers. I'm going to let you know. So when whenever they tell you that their heifers were slaughtered, there are 5 right there. They haven't slaughtered any of them. Some people were saying that they slaughtered the red heifers privately. Nobody knew about them. It's nonsense. It's a lie. I saw them and I spoke with a rabbi who's in charge of, the people who are in charge of that. We have to stop propagating lies to people. All this whole nonsense of living in fear is creating anti-Semitism because people do not understand how these things work. And it's really sad and shameful what's really going on in regards to these things. This is Rabbi Mackover. Now, remember I told you about Rabbi Ariel? He's a leading rabbi of the temple in the world. Well, Rabbi Mackover supposed to be the one in line after Rabbi Ariel. He lives in Shiloh. He requested, which I felt very honored, he requested for us to go so he can show us the red heifer and guide us there. I've seen the red heifers before, but now they have them in Shiloh. And he was very kind to invite me and had an opportunity. 3 of the 5 are still kosher. 3 of the 5 are still kosher. Okay. Now, um, this is a man. I'm running out of time, but this is Itamar. After Shiloh, we went to Itamar. Now, why is this really important? When you read Deuteronomy chapter 27 and 28, the amount of blessing, the amount of cursing, the amount of blessing is this one right here on the left of your screen, and the amount of cursing is the one on the right. In the middle is Nablus. Today, what is called Nablus, but in reality is the biblical city Shechem. Shechem, that Jacob bought a piece of land, and this place that is biblical today is Nablus. Well, this is the 2 mountains where the people of Israel ratify the covenant when they walk back into the land from Egypt. Now, this valley is very important. As I'm moving towards the right here pretty soon, there's a valley. You have Alon Moreh. Okay, that's the mountain there, Mount of Blessing, and the Mount of Cursing, and the middle is Nablus. Well, that's the ancient city, Shechem. Now, that valley right here is very significant. I'm going to stop it here for a minute. Now, in that valley, Abraham walked when he came from Mesopotamia to Shechem. Jacob, when he came from Laban's house, he walked through here. Joseph, when he was later sold, Dothan is beyond those mountains. When he went to Egypt, they went through there. When the children of Israel returned from Egypt, they came through that valley to the Mount of Blessing and the Mount of Cursing. Okay, that valley is very significant. I'm on the top of the mountain of Itamar, where Itamar and Eliezer were buried. So Alon Moreh, this is Alon Moreh. In the book of Genesis, chapter 12, it's talking about exactly the same location. We were there. We got to see a very important geographical location where the forefathers of Israel once walked, where the children of Israel once walked. The whole episode of the fight with Shechem, with the Levi and Simeon, they wage war on the circumcised of the city happened in that mountain. Okay, so Israel, we go there on my tour, by the way, and I'm standing here on the high point of Itamar, which is the place where Eliezer, the son of Aaron, and Itamar were buried, and also Gideon were buried on the same mountain. Okay, all right, let's move on. And this is, by the way, something that I never do that I did this year. I don't like going on the temple platform. Although the temple's not there, I consider that to be very holy, and I respect its holiness. But I got an opportunity to meet with Rabbi Mackover, and we were studying, Augusto and I, we were studying the cisterns the night before. We were on the Temple Mount to look at the cisterns, to look at the topography of the temple, where the buildings would have been. Joe and I, we've been doing research. The research team, we've been looking into this for a long time. We know now the cistern that allows us to know where the temple building was located. If we know where the temple building was located, then we have to count 12 cubits, okay, to the east, and then we know where the altar is located. This is huge. We know where the altar would have been based on all this evidence. That's why the Khan Rashid model that you saw, let me go back real quick. I'm going to take you there. Because what makes this model so significant, take you back to this. Okay. This model, what makes this model so significant to us is what's underneath of it. When you go under the model, Joe and I spend a lot of time underneath of that. And anyone who goes down with them, we have to get under that model. You get all dirty, but you learn the cisterns built to scale what they look like in the time of the temple. And also it was surveyed by Khan Rashid, Charles Warren, Charles Wilson, by all Barclay, everyone. They surveyed them. They were royal engineers. So when you go under that model and you look up, you can basically know where each one of the cisterns were. And then once you know where the cisterns were, then you know where the buildings of the temple were located, because they needed water to function. Okay? Electricity they get with oil, but the water they needed to put them because of the laws of holiness, and the water has to be kosher for what they needed. So therefore, it had to be in bedrock. It was all in bedrock. One of the pools is called the Great Sea. It's bigger than a three-size Olympic pools. So once we know that one particular cistern, we know where the temple building is located. Once we know where the temple building is located, we know where the altar was located. So let me take you there. So for the first time in, I think, 15 years, based on the research, I decided to go on the temple platform. Okay, where the temple would have been. I'm now in the area where Beit Aptinas would have been. I'm in the southeast corner of the temple platform. Okay, where the Dome of the Rock is. It's a huge area. You see this little wellhead here? Underneath that is a cistern. Now, the other side of the cistern is on the south east corner, but off the platform in the bottom. Now, this particular well or cistern is located, when you read the Mishnah, it tells you the dimensions of what the temple looked like. 100, okay, 100 long, and it gives you the dimensions from north to south, east to west. This is cistern number 28. You may think, Rico, I don't understand. It's too much. Why is this relevant? Well, this is an important one. So we located this cistern. When we locate this cistern, now we know, based on the Mishnah, something that is called Beth Horodat Hamayim, which is a drainage system. So when the go read Midot 4:7. I don't have time to look for it right now. Midot 4:7, chapter 4, paragraph 7, and it's outlining for you the dimensions of the temple from north to south. And when it gets towards the south, it says there was a area of 3 cubits where there was a drain of the water from the roof of the temple. It's connected to that cistern. So now we know with the cistern that's connected to the southeast corner of the temple building. Now this is Beit Hanitzot. This is the northeast. Another cistern, 30 and 31. Okay, let me move on. So these are all cisterns on the Temple Mount. This is a different location. This is the original western wall. Let me move on. Okay. On the right of the screen is south. On the top of the screen is east. On the left is north, as you can see right here. Now, underneath the model, you see every single one of the cisterns, the number system here. Okay, number 28 is according to the Conrad Schick numbering system. If you go by the Charles Warren, it's number 5. Now, this is the cistern, and this is the place where I was telling you of the wellhead. Now, you see this little arm that you see here? This is the key. Now, this is what I presented to Rabbi Mackover. See? Rabbi Mackover, I was presenting this information with permission of my teacher, you know, and I was showing him based on the archaeology. He did not know about the archaeology on the cistern. They don't really study a lot of this stuff. That's not their focus, okay? So I was able to present to him the same map, show him the cisterns, who survey them, and connecting the Mishnah Midot 4:7 and connecting it to the original corner of the temple so we can find the altar, okay? So the whole teaching was to show him that this particular cistern is like 30 feet under what would have been Beit Aptinas. And if we trace back the rabbinical evidence or the Mishnah evidence of the temple building and also the drain that was on the south of the building that was 3 cubits wide, for all the water to come from the rain, they have to capture the water. It has to connect, it has to go somewhere. And now this particular arm right here is what allowed the water to get into that cistern. Now, why is this so significant? Because if we trace every single one of them, for example, you see number 27 right there? This is where in the court of the women, this would have been the chamber of the leper right here. You see number 29 and 30? I said 30 and 31 was 29 and 30. This would have been on the northeast corner, Beit Hanitzot. And this is the area where they used to do the slaughtering of the animals, of the slaughtering for the communal offerings. So there was water everywhere. But if I can show you the cistern 28 and this arm, which was a conduit that was connected to the southeastern corner of the temple building, Once we locate the temple building, we need to count certain amount of cubits to the east, and that's where the altar would have been found. And that's what I had the privilege and the opportunity to introduce this to Rab Makov for his consideration. Now, Joe is going to go back. He was, hopefully he'll go back soon, and he's going to try to present more information to them. And hopefully I have the privilege to be with him to go do that. So the whole idea, guys, is that things are happening. I don't think Joe has been doing this for a long time, by the way. He knows them for a long time. He has the privilege to have access and present information on temple research. And now I'm honored to have the privilege to join him on some of these endeavors. And I don't think this would have happened a long time ago. By the way, him and Rabbi Persov respect Joe very much. They actually respect him very much for his research. And now the Lord is opening doors for me as a Spanish-speaking person to bring this message not only to the English-speaking audience, but also the Spanish speakers. So this is only a little short clip of a study on the places that I went to and how significant they are. But the highlight of the trip was to have the honor and the privilege to present some of the research, archaeological, historical, biblical, and also rabbinical, that points to the location of the cistern, which can allow us to know where the temple building was. And once we know where the temple building was, we know where the altar. Once we know where the altar is, be aware, because the altar has to be in the same location where the first temple and the second temple was located. And if you read the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, you'll know that when they came back from Babylon in the time of the Persian Empire, right? They build the altar. They rebuild it in the same place where the first one was. It cannot be in a different place. It's part of the blueprint, the Tavnit, okay? May the Lord bless you and keep you guys. Listen, subscribe to Wisdom and Torah and join the vision. If you want to donate to us to continue to do these type of teachings, to go to Israel, do research, please consider us, wisdomandtorah.com. And we're going to continue to do more teachings and share with you what we're learning. And so we can learn together and be aware of the end times and the proper information being presented with the proper sources. Amen. Shalom to everyone. Bye-bye.